AITA for not forgiving my boyfriend after he said no one else would ever put up with you? Hi Reddit, throwaway account because my boyfriend knows my main. I honestly don't even know if I'm overreacting here, but I've reached a point where I can't ignore how toxic things have gotten. I just need an outside perspective. So, some context. My boyfriend, let's call him Ethan, and I have been together for almost 3 years. When we met, he was the sweetest, most attentive guy I'd ever dated. He laughed at my dumb jokes, remembered tiny details about my life, and honestly, I thought I had finally met someone who truly got me. I was cautious at first. I'd been burned before, but he seemed different. The first year was mostly great. We had our normal couple disagreements, nothing too serious. But subtle things started creeping in around the 14 to 15-month mark. At first, I thought I was imagining them, but over time, it became a pattern. For example, Ethan has this way of twisting situations so that I feel like the problem is always mine. I'll bring up something that bothers me, something small, like, hey, I felt a little ignored yesterday when we were out with your friends, and he'll respond with, you're overthinking again, you always do this. That kind of comment, small at first, started to pile up. Then there were the arguments that escalated fast. I remember one particular night. We had plans to meet his friends for dinner. I got caught up at work and ran a little late. When I finally arrived, I felt tired and just wanted to eat and relax. But Ethan immediately started sighing loudly and saying, of course you're late. I should have known. I tried to brush it off. I'm really sorry. Traffic was terrible. And he snapped, you're always sorry, but nothing ever changes. You don't think about how your actions affect me. I froze for a moment because I genuinely thought I had apologized. But he didn't stop there. The comment turned into a whole tirade about how selfish I supposedly was, how he always has to accommodate my schedule, and, finally, he added, in this calm but cutting tone, honestly, no one else would ever put up with you the way I do. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me felt anger boiling up, but another part, a smaller, scared part, immediately felt guilty. Was I really being unreasonable? Was I difficult, as he implied? I ended up leaving early that night, driving home in silence, and crying in the car for over an hour. I wanted to text him, tell him I was upset, but I didn't. Something inside me just snapped. I didn't want to be the person apologizing for feeling hurt. Some background on our dynamic. Ethan is charming, smart, and funny. Everyone likes him. He knows exactly how to use that to his advantage. On some days, he's incredibly loving, supportive, and sweet. He'll send me a cute message at work or bring me my favorite snack, and suddenly I question if I'm overreacting to everything else. He knows how to flip the script so quickly that I start doubting myself. And honestly, that's why I feel so trapped sometimes. Friends tell me, he's gaslighting you, or you don't deserve that, but a part of me thinks maybe I do overreact. But then I replay that night over and over, the sighs, the accusations, and that line about no one else putting up with me, and I feel sick. Even in our fights, there's this mixture of subtle and overt cruelty. He'll make passive-aggressive comments about my habits, like leaving a plate in the sink or being late by a few minutes, and then escalate into name-calling if I push back. He once said, "You're so dramatic, no wonder no one else stays with you," during an argument about literally nothing important. And yet, he's also the guy who'll surprise me with tickets to a concert, tell me I look beautiful even when I feel gross, or curl up next to me and whisper that I'm his everything. That push and pull, I think, is part of why I'm still here. Text messages example. Me. Ethan, I just need you to acknowledge that last night hurt me. Ethan, I acknowledged it when I said I was tired of your overthinking. Me. That's not an acknowledgement. That's dismissal. Ethan, you're impossible. I can't even talk to you without you turning it into an attack. No one else would put up with this. That was the tipping point for me. I didn't respond. I felt frozen and small. I've been thinking a lot about whether I'm justified in still being upset. He did apologize later, sort of. He said, "I didn't mean it like that. I was just frustrated. You know I love you." But the words feel hollow. It's like an excuse to keep me around without addressing the core issue, his repeated insults and manipulation. I haven't forgiven him. I don't think I can. Every time I replay the argument, every time I hear that phrase in my head, I feel the anger, the hurt, the betrayal. And yet, part of me wonders, am I being too harsh? AITA, for not forgiving him? I don't know what I want anymore. Part of me wants to leave, part of me wants to fix it, and part of me is scared that if I do leave, I'll regret it. Regret it? I don't know if I'm being unreasonable. AITA for holding on to this anger? For feeling like his words changed something I can't forgive? Update. Things didn't magically improve. If anything, the tension quietly grew. Ethan's apologies were like band-aids on a fracture. They covered the wound but never fixed it. I kept trying to rationalize his behavior, telling myself, he's stressed, he doesn't mean it, it's just the heat of the moment. But each incident chipped away at my patience. Even mundane days became exercises in walking on eggshells. Something as small as him commenting on how I dressed or a sarcastic remark about my spending habits could trigger hours of doubt and anxiety. I remember one Saturday afternoon vividly. We were making brunch together, and I suggested adding a little extra cheese to the omelets. Ethan rolled his eyes and muttered, "Really? You think that's necessary?" I laughed nervously, trying to keep the mood light. "It's just a little extra flavor, no big deal." "Whatever," he snapped, shoving the pan slightly. "You always do things your way. No wonder nobody else wants to deal with you." It was like a slow punch to the gut. I had tried to laugh it off, to defuse the tension, but the words echoed in my mind. Nobody else would put up with you. I remembered every small fight, every sigh, every sarcastic comment, and suddenly, it all made sense why I felt so constantly drained. That weekend, I texted my best friend, Maddie. I think I'm going crazy. He says these things and then acts like nothing happened. Am I overreacting? Maddie. Girl, you're not. That's manipulation. You don't have to justify your feelings. But he's charming, and sometimes he's really sweet. I don't want to overreact. Maddie. Sweet doesn't erase cruelty. Think about how you feel most of the time, not just when he's nice. Her words stayed with me. I tried to ignore them, of course, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't have to settle for a relationship that drained me emotionally. Ethan had a way of twisting arguments so that I constantly second-guessed myself. I'd bring up a concern, like, say, how he ignored my request to spend quality time together, and he'd immediately spin it. You're imagining things. I did spend time with you. You're just being paranoid again. I'd replay the evening in my head, trying to convince myself he was right, only to realize later that I had been emotionally minimized. Over time, I noticed a pattern. Almost every disagreement ended with a comment designed to make me doubt my perception of reality. But there were also the fights where he became overtly hostile. During one evening in particular, we were discussing weekend plans. I wanted to visit my sister for her birthday brunch. He didn't want to go, claiming he had other plans with friends. I tried to compromise. I get that you want to see your friends, but maybe we can meet them later? Or go for dinner instead. He laughed derisively. You're impossible. Seriously, I don't know why I put up with you sometimes. I froze. I'd been hearing passive-aggressive digs for months, but this was sharp, direct, and painful. You mean you're saying you don't want to be with me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He shrugged. I didn't say that. I said you're impossible. Big difference. The big difference was clearly lost on me, intentionally, I think. The point was to make me feel small and uncertain. That night ended with me crying alone in the bathroom while he lay on the couch scrolling on his phone. He eventually came in, placing his hand gently on my shoulder, whispering, "You're overthinking again." I'm sorry. The cruelty followed by brief sweetness kept me tethered to him. Every apology made me hope for change. Every insult reminded me why I couldn't fully trust him. I was also juggling a demanding job at the time, trying to excel professionally while managing the constant emotional roller coaster at home was exhausting. I began to notice that my self-esteem, once solid, was eroding. I hesitated to make decisions without running them by him first, subconsciously bracing for his critique. One evening, After a particularly brutal argument where he criticized how I had spent the day, I texted Maddie again. Me, I can't do this anymore. He makes me feel like everything I do is wrong. Maddie, then don't. You deserve a relationship where you feel supported, not like you're constantly failing. Me, but I love him. I don't know if it's love if it hurts this much. She didn't answer immediately, but her words echoed in my head long after. Love that hurts shouldn't feel like the norm, yet I found myself rationalizing his behavior constantly. It all came to a head one evening when Ethan and I were having dinner. I had been quiet for most of the night, trying to avoid conflict, but he seemed determined to pick a fight. "Why are you so quiet?" he asked, eyes narrowing. I'm tired," I admitted. "Tired of what? I can't even understand you anymore. You're impossible sometimes, you know that?" I snapped, frustration boiling over. "You call me impossible, but I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around you. You twist everything I say and make me feel like I'm crazy." He leaned back, calm, dangerous calm. "Oh, please. You're dramatic. No one else would ever put up with you the way I do." I felt the air leave my lungs. The words hit harder than any argument we'd had before. This wasn't a fight. This was a verdict, a declaration that I was a problem, that my feelings were invalid, that my worth was tied to him tolerating me. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I left the dinner without another word, walked home in silence, and cried for hours. This time, I didn't call him. I didn't send a message. I just sat with the anger, hurt, and humiliation, letting it settle in. I remembered a time when someone had made me feel valued without manipulation or insults. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to think, maybe I deserve that again. Update. It had been weeks since that dinner argument with Ethan, and life felt blurry. I was still in the relationship, but the anger and hurt lingered like a shadow. I went about my routine, work, errands, small outings with friends, pretending that everything was fine when really, I was constantly replaying his words in my head. "No one else would ever put up with you." One evening, Maddie suggested we do something different, a low-key gathering at a friend's house. "You need a break from your drama," she said. "You're spiraling in your apartment." I laughed half-heartedly but agreed, knowing she was right. As I arrived, the room was buzzing with familiar faces, laughter, and casual music. Then I saw him, Lucas. It had been years since I'd last seen him. We'd gone to the same high school and had a brief, awkward friendship that never quite developed into anything. Back then, he was always kind and funny, a little shy but protective in his own quiet way. I had some crush on him, of course, who wouldn't? But he'd never made a move. And I hadn't thought about him much since. Until now. He noticed me immediately, smiling in that warm, easy way that made me forget the tension in my chest. "Hey, long time no see," he said, voice light, teasing. "Lucas. Wow, it really has been forever," I replied, genuinely happy. We drifted into conversation like no time had passed at all. He asked about work, hobbies, and family, genuinely interested, and I found myself relaxing for the first time in months. I laughed at his jokes, teasing him back, and for a moment, I felt normal. Not criticized, not judged, not manipulated, just myself. We ended up sitting in a quieter corner, sipping drinks, talking about random memories from high school. He pulled out his phone at one point, showing me old photos we'd taken during some ridiculous school event. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. "I can't believe you still have these," I said. "This is embarrassing." He grinned. "Hey, these are priceless. You looked amazing, though, even if you were making that horrendous face in half of them." I blushed, feeling a warmth spread through me. It wasn't the infuriating push and pull of Ethan's attention. It was steady, kind, and effortless. Lucas's presence reminded me of who I had been before Ethan, confident, carefree, not constantly questioning my worth. I realized something that night. Being with someone who truly sees you, who makes you feel safe, is nothing like the constant tension I had been living with. We exchanged numbers before the night ended, promising to catch up soon. That small interaction left a lingering feeling I couldn't ignore, a mix of nostalgia and curiosity. I didn't text Ethan about the gathering. I knew he would guilt-trip me or make me feel selfish for spending time elsewhere. In the week following, he started noticing I was quieter, more distant, and he became noticeably irritable. One night, as I was scrolling through my phone, he leaned over my shoulder. "What are you smiling at?" he asked, eyes narrowing. "Nothing," I muttered, quickly hiding the screen. "Don't lie to me," he snapped. "I know when you're up to something. Who are you texting?" "I'm just catching up with some friends," I said carefully, heart racing. Ethan's eyes darkened slightly, but he didn't press further that night. Still, the subtle tension hung over me, a reminder that I was technically still in a relationship, trapped in the emotional sway of someone who could hurt me with a single word. Over the next few weeks, Lucas and I kept in touch. Our messages were casual, sharing funny memes, chatting about work, sometimes making plans to meet up for coffee. I felt a thrill I hadn't experienced in a long time: excitement, anticipation, genuine happiness. I still hadn't realized that Lucas liked me. From my perspective, it was purely friendly, reconnecting with an old friend. But little things made me pause, even if I didn't consciously acknowledge them. He remembered tiny details about me I had long forgotten mentioning. He checked in if I mentioned a stressful day at work. He made subtle jokes that seemed to be just for me, the kind that made me smile stupidly at my phone. I found myself thinking about him when I wasn't texting, smiling at random memories of our conversations. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was something warmer, more personal. And yet, I felt guilty. Guilty for feeling happy without Ethan. Guilty for laughing at Lucas's jokes when I hadn't even confronted Ethan about our last fight. Guilty for even thinking about leaving someone I technically still loved. But the seed of realization was planted. Maybe I could feel safe and valued again. Maybe I didn't have to endure constant manipulation and insults to feel loved. The night I went to bed after our last coffee meetup, I lay awake thinking, maybe it's not wrong to want something better. Maybe it's not wrong to let myself be happy. And for the first time in months, I felt a tiny flicker of hope. Update. I couldn't stop thinking about Lucas. It wasn't just nostalgia anymore. It was a warmth I hadn't felt with Ethan in months, maybe even years. We texted lightly over the next few days. Mostly small talk, memes, and some shared frustration about work. But even in the mundane, there was a new kind of connection, playful teasing, a slightly flirty undertone that I didn't consciously recognize at first. I didn't know that Lucas had been feeling the same way. He had liked me for years, had noticed how distant I had become with Ethan, and every time I laughed at his jokes, every time I responded warmly to his messages, it was like a confirmation that maybe I still felt something for him too. But he wasn't ready to say it outright. He wanted to see if I would take the first step. Meanwhile, Ethan had started noticing subtle changes in my behavior. I laughed less at his jokes, didn't immediately answer every text, and seemed quieter during the evenings. One night, as we were lying on the couch, he turned toward me, voice sharp. "Why are you so distant lately? Are you seeing someone else?" I froze. The words stung, not because they were true, but because he asked with accusation rather than curiosity. "No," I said, careful. "I'm just tired, Ethan. Maybe we both need a break." He laughed bitterly. "A break? Don't be dramatic. You always want more. I don't know why I stay with you sometimes. You're impossible." It was the same old line, the one that cut deeper than anything else. "You're impossible." I realized I didn't even care about defending myself anymore. The anger that had been simmering for months now roared. "You know what?" I snapped, standing up. "I'm done with your insults. I can't keep doing this, pretending that I'm okay when you treat me like this. I deserve better." He stared at me, shocked, a mix of disbelief and anger crossing his features. For once, I felt a strange power in standing up for myself. The next day, I found myself texting Lucas more eagerly. Me, "Hey, you free this weekend? I could use some normal, fun, no-drama time." Lucas, "Absolutely. Normal, fun, no-drama time? Sounds perfect." That weekend, we went for a long walk at a park near the river. The crisp air, soft laughter, and light teasing felt like a balm for months of emotional exhaustion. Lucas listened as I vented lightly about work and even mentioned Ethan without heavy detail. He offered advice, small comforting gestures, brushing a strand of hair from my face, joking about how dramatic I was being, but in a gentle, affectionate way. I laughed more than I had in months. I realized that, with him, I didn't have to be on edge. I didn't have to constantly assess how I said things, or brace for his reactions. Little did I know, Lucas was noticing everything about me. The way I smiled when I laughed, the way my eyes lit up when I talked about things I loved, the tiny quirks that made me me. He had liked me back in high school and had only fallen harder as he watched me grow into this amazing, strong, beautiful woman. Every small moment felt like confirmation that he wasn't going to let me slip away again. Meanwhile, Ethan began to spiral in his own way. He called more often, texts became demanding, and passive-aggressive comments escalated. One evening, he appeared unannounced at my apartment. "Why didn't you answer my texts?" he demanded. "I was busy," I said calmly. "I can't always reply instantly." "You could make time for me," he snapped. "Why don't you care anymore?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time felt a complete disconnect. "I care about myself," I said firmly. "I can't keep feeling small just to make you feel okay." He froze, and then stormed out without another word. It was the first time I truly felt like I had taken back my power. That night, I lay in bed thinking about Lucas again. He had no idea, but I felt drawn to him, the way I hadn't felt in years. Maybe I could actually do this. Maybe I can be happy again. I didn't know that he had been waiting for the right moment, hoping I would make the first move, hoping that he wouldn't scare me off with his feelings. And as I drifted off to sleep, I felt something I hadn't in months. Hope. Update. It was late Friday evening. I had just finished work, exhausted but looking forward to a quiet night. Ethan, of course, had other plans. He'd shown up at my apartment uninvited, a scowl on his face and a bottle of wine in hand. "I thought we could have a drink and relax," he said, his tone deceptively casual. I was wary, but I nodded. Maybe a quiet evening could work. That was the last mistake. As soon as we sat on the couch, he started. First small digs about my cooking, then a comment about how lazy I had been all week, and finally a direct insult that hit me harder than anything before. "You know, you're really annoying when you act like everything is your little problem. No wonder people get tired of you." Something inside me snapped. The familiar guilt, the self-doubt, the tears, all of it, boiled over into one surge of clarity. I stood up abruptly, voice steady but full of anger. "You know what, Ethan? I am done. I am done with your insults, your passive-aggressive comments, your constant manipulation. I don't need this in my life anymore. And I don't care what you think about me. This is the last time I'm standing here listening to you try to tear me down." His mouth fell open. He looked like he couldn't process what I had just said. "Wait, what are you talking about?" he stammered. "I'm breaking up with you," I said firmly. "Right here, right now. I am done, Ethan. I hope you understand that this isn't negotiable." He tried to argue, tried to twist it around, tried the old line, "You're overreacting, you'll regret this." I cut him off. "No. This is not about overreacting. This is about realizing my worth. Goodbye, Ethan." I walked past him, grabbing my coat. His stunned silence was the final punctuation to months of emotional manipulation. The moment I shut the door behind me, I knew exactly who I needed to call. My hands shook as I dialed Lucas's number. "Hello." His voice sounded tired but cheerful, immediately comforting. "Lucas, I need to see you. Can you meet me?" I said, urgency and relief in my voice. "Of course. Where?" "Anywhere. I'll be there in 10 minutes." We met at our usual park spot, the one near the river with the benches and the view of the city lights reflecting on the water. Lucas was already there, leaning against a railing, his face lighting up the moment he saw me. "What happened?" he asked gently as I approached, noticing my tear-streaked face and the faint tremble in my hands. "I broke up with Ethan," I said, voice shaking but resolute. I couldn't take it anymore. I don't regret it, but I needed someone to be here." He stepped closer, hand brushing mine softly. "I'm here. Always." I took a deep breath. "Lucas, I have to tell you something. Something I should have said a long time ago. I like you. I have for years. I kept thinking it was just a silly crush, but I can't ignore it anymore. I want to be with you. If you want the same. I don't care about the past. I want us." He froze for a moment, then broke into the most genuine, warm smile I'd ever seen. "I've liked you for years too," he said softly. "I didn't say anything because I didn't want to push you or make things complicated. But I've always hoped you'd feel the same way." I laughed through tears. the relief washing over me like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Really? I whispered. Really, he said, taking my hand in his. And I've got the old photos to prove it, but don't worry, I won't embarrass you this time. I rolled my eyes, but my heart felt light for the first time in months. He pulled me into a gentle hug, protective but tender, and I realized how different this felt. How safe, how joyful, how right. That night, I felt the weight of months of manipulation lift. Ethan, spiraling from the breakup, called and texted repeatedly, leaving angry, desperate messages. I didn't respond. I didn't care. My heart was elsewhere, with someone who saw me, valued me, and made me feel alive again. Lucas and I walked under the city lights, talking, laughing, sharing stories, slowly discovering each other as more than just friends. There was no gaslighting, no insults, no tension. Just warmth, protection, and a shared excitement for something new and real. For the first time in a long time, I knew I had made the right choice. Update. The day after the breakup, I woke up with a strange lightness I hadn't felt in months. The tension in my shoulders, the constant knot in my stomach, it was gone. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. The first thing I did was block Ethan. Every number, every chat app, every social media account gone. No more late-night calls, no more passive-aggressive texts, no more fear of his sudden appearances. Part of me felt guilty briefly, like maybe I was overreacting. But then I remembered his words, his insults, the constant manipulation, and the guilt vanished. I owed myself this peace. Lucas texted early that morning. Lucas, morning coffee later? I insist. Me. Morning. Sure. I could use the company of someone who doesn't insult me before 9 a.m. Lucas, deal. I'll bring pastries. When I met him at the little cafe by the river, he had a small bag of croissants and a ridiculous grin on his face, like he was about to pull off some kind of heist. You remembered my favorite, I said, smiling despite myself. Of course. What kind of friend or future boyfriend maybe forgets croissants? He teased, handing me one. I laughed, the sound coming easily, without tension. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells around anyone. Of course, Ethan didn't disappear quietly. His calls and texts started coming almost immediately after the breakup, each one more desperate than the last. Ethan, I can't believe you did this. You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret it. Me? Blocked. Ethan, we need to talk. This isn't over. Me? Blocked on all platforms. I felt a thrill of liberation every time I blocked him. No confrontation, no manipulation, no guilt, just peace. Lucas had this habit of noticing little things about me. He'd send me random photos of funny cats when I mentioned I had a stressful day at work. He remembered the little quirks I had, my coffee order, my favorite park bench, even which movies I loved but pretended I hated. It was the opposite of Ethan, who had always weaponized knowledge of me to manipulate or criticize. With Lucas, it felt like care. Thoughtful, effortless, natural care. One night, as we walked along the river, he suddenly stopped and looked at me seriously. Do you know how amazing you are? He asked. I blinked, a little caught off guard. I think so sometimes. No, I mean really. You're strong, funny, smart, and you make people feel better just by being around them. Especially me. I felt a warmth I hadn't felt in years, and I realized this is what being seen and appreciated really feels like. Ethan's spiraling became almost comical in comparison. I didn't check his messages anymore. Friends would occasionally tell me about his antics, calling my apartment, texting everyone he could find, posting desperate, vague social media statuses. I didn't care. I was done with that life. Meanwhile, Lucas and I were creating our own little bubble of happiness, built on trust, laughter, and genuine affection. Every day reinforced that I had made the right choice, leaving toxicity behind for someone who truly cared about me. One evening, Lucas suggested we do something a little more formal, a proper dinner at a small, cozy restaurant. The dinner was filled with laughter, teasing, and the kind of conversation that made hours feel like minutes. By the end of the night, when we walked along the river under the city lights, he reached for my hand. I really like this, he said softly. Me too, I whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. No guilt, no fear, just happiness.